What's up, guys? Welcome back to the ASAP Automotive channel, and today we're going to be giving the old Fire Chicken some new legs, so stay tuned. Okay, like I said, we're giving the Fire Chicken some new legs, and by new legs, I mean new axle shafts. So, there's a few different ways you can go with this when dealing with the rear ends in these cars. You know, from the factory, it's just got a 10 bolt back there, which does perfectly fine at stock power levels. Well, obviously, our thing is stock is not an option. So this car's not staying at that level for very long. So, I could go out and spend a bunch of money and put a built 9-inch back there, which are very heavy, but work. They'll take all the power you want to put at them and everything, and that's great. There is another option out there where they do like a built 8.8 that bolts right in and stuff like that. That's eventually the option we're going to go with once we get up to the main power level that I want to be at. But for now, to buy us some time, rather than spend a few grand, we're going to spend a few hundred. So I got a set of Mosier axles that slide right in. We need to do rear axle bearings anyway, so I figured it was a perfect time to do so. So we got these are direct replacement. Now, I will give you a heads up, when you're ordering these axles for one of these F-bodies, be careful. I got lucky, and this thing doesn't have the nannies on it, the traction control and all that, which would be a 4-channel ABS. This one only has 3 channels, so it just has one speed sensor back there on the diff, rather than one each out at the wheels, or at the end of the axles. So if you have the 4-channel, you need to order the proper 4-channel axles, otherwise it's going to act up. You're going to have like a little tone ring out here on there. Now, you can possibly swap them over. I've heard of people doing that, and that's cool. It's just a lot more work for the few extra bucks that it is for the axles. So, but anyways, just be careful when you're ordering that stuff. I actually picked these up at Summit a while back. This was actually a anniversary gift for my wife. It's great now buying her this car because gifts are easy. So, but also I got on the WS6 store. You guys know them. We've talked about them before. You got the TA Performance diff cover / stud girdle. By stud girdle, I mean the main cap girdle for the differential, and you'll see here in a minute. So under load, those little main caps will flex in the differential, and that can cause premature wear, yada yada, and that's when stuff goes boom. I'm trying to keep that from happening. So anyways, about 150 something bucks. Got this off the WS6 store, and also got the new studs for the main caps. So instead of bolts, we're going to studs. And the way this works is it's got the adjustable rods here that put pressure against the bearing, the main caps back there, and keeps them from deflecting so much. It's nice, thick, heavy aluminum. And also, one of the cool things is it gives you not only a fill, but a drain plug there. So you don't have to pull the cover off anymore, try to get it nice and hot, and then try to suck it out with like a Mighty Vac or something. Just makes servicing it way easier, especially taking this thing out to a track a lot, putting a lot of pressure on it and stuff. Not a bad idea to be changing that thing at least one, fluid in that thing at least once a year. So, that being said, now the fun part, we're going to start tearing stuff apart. Alright, so one of the first things we're going to do, we got the vehicle up in the air. We've already been through the whole rigmarole of properly getting your vehicle in the air or whatever, being safe. If you need to use jack stands or whatever, make sure it's well chocked and everything so it doesn't kill you and you don't become another YouTube fail video. Anyways, car's going to lift, it's up in the air, it's safe. First thing we're going to do is take our brakes off. Now, it's a perfect time if you want to do brakes on the car. I need to, I just don't have the stuff here handy yet, so that's coming later. So for right now, we're going to go ahead and take the brackets off at the axle tube itself. So you can just take it all off in one assembly. We got these cool little caliper hangers you can get off anywhere, any part store or whatever. We're going to go ahead and hang it up out of the way, because remember, you don't want to let your calipers hang by the hose, especially with the weight of the bracket and all that. You could damage it internally and then have issues with the brakes dragging or whatever. So we're going to go ahead and get this caliper off, hang it out of the way, and pull our rotor off. And the next thing we can do is go ahead and work on getting the vehicle on up, getting the rear cover off and the fluid out, and get to pulling these axle shafts. So let's get the brakes off of this thing. Alright, well, thanks to nature's Loctite, rust and corrosion, it didn't want to come off, but ended up getting it loose. Fortunately, like I said, I plan on changing out doing the brakes here soon anyways. I'm upgrading some of the stuff we took off of Roxanne before. Those calipers are going on here. and some power stop pads and rotors, but that's coming down the road. So now we're gonna go ahead and take the blower nozzle, go ahead and clean these up a little bit around here. We'll go ahead and run it up, take the rear diff cover off, get the fluid out, and then work on getting our axle shafts out. Alright, so the cool thing about ordering this stuff from the WS6 store is if you order that TA Performance diff cover, stud girdle kit or whatever, or main cap girdle, if you want to get the studs to do away with bolts here and go with studs and nuts, which will make it a fair bit stronger, it's like way cheaper to buy them together. I think it's like 30 something bucks normally, but it's like an extra 15 if you buy it with the covers. So pretty good deal. Definitely another reason to buy it from them. Like I said, we don't get sponsored by them or anything like that. Just a cool guy that does a lot of stuff for these cars. Figured to help him out. So anyways, what you're gonna do is you do one side at a time. You got a cap, main cap, half moon cap here, half moon cap over here. That holds your bearings for your differential right here. So what we're gonna do is break both of these loose, and then we're gonna go ahead and pull one out at a time. We're gonna put one of the new studs in. We're gonna run it down, torque it to about 10 foot-pounds. And then we're gonna start our washer and nut and just finger tighten it, pull our other bolts out, do the same thing, and then go back. I think it's like around 65 to 75 foot-pounds. It'll tell you in the kit when you buy it. So we're gonna go ahead and do that on both sides, go ahead and get those down. And then we gotta let it back down and put it neutral so we can move the differential a little bit and work on getting the center section out so we can slide in, get our clips out, and slide our axles out. Alright, so you take your bolts out, notice how it's got the course threads, you match up the same course threads, and these are fine out here. You start your course thread into the diff itself, you run it down finger tight, then you put your washer on, and put your nut on, and just start those, and then go ahead and, well, you can go ahead and torque the stud down to 10 foot-pounds, and then once you get both studs in and torque down, then you can go ahead and tighten down your nut and washer. Alright, so now we got our studs in, got our nuts, torqued down to 75 foot-pounds, studs torqued to 10. I'd go back over them about 2 or 3 times just to make sure they're seated down good and everything, and that being go over the studs a couple of times, make sure they're seated, and then go over the nuts and make sure, because you'll find they might move a little bit as they seat in. Got those down. Next thing we're going to do is we got the vehicle, like I said, we left it in neutral and got it rotated around. So we've got your little 8mm bolt here. Go ahead and turn out, pull that out, and it's nice and tight in there. Then you got this block that slides on out. It's part of that whole limited slip differential back there. And inside you've got a C-clip. These are what's called C-clip axles. And so what you do is you push the axle in a little bit, which we've got this one on out, but you'll push it in and this will slide on out. Sometimes you might need a magnet to get in there to fish it out. Then you can go ahead and pull your axle out, and you just repeat the same for the other side. All right, so now that we got our axle shafts out, next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and change our axle seals and axle bearings. If you're in here doing this job, putting these axles in, I would highly recommend changing them out. This time is definitely the time to do it. I've got a little bit of roaring back here after 100,000 miles. They're getting a little rough. Surprisingly, they weren't leaking, but I got a new set of national bearings and a new set of OEM seals to go in there with it. I actually ordered the seals off of WS6 store as well to give you a cool little option while you're in there ordering. The bearings I just got from O'Reilly's. National is one of the main. They're actually an OEM supplier to a lot of manufacturers anyway, so they're a good bearing. Don't go with some like cheap Master Pro or some knockoff Chinese stuff. The last thing you want to be doing is cheaping out on a wheel bearing like that. So we got this tool here to go ahead and get here and hook it and go ahead and knock out the seals. We're going to do on both sides. Then I'll show you the tools we go in there to knock out the wheel bearings. We knocked out the seals with the seal remover, and then we got this tool here. It's actually two parts. You got your slide hammer here, which threads onto this end, which is an axle puller. So you got your bearing, or your axle bearing puller, I'm sorry. You get your bearing in here in the axle tube. You slide this tool in like, get it sideways, that catches against the bearing. You run the nut up to where this flange here is nice and snug against it, keeps it from moving around. Now normally these kits will come with like 3 different sizes. You just gotta make sure you got the right one that's not too wide but not too small, catches the bearing, and then just slide back and forth a couple of times and it knocks it on out. You can try doing it with the seal. Normally don't have a whole lot of luck with that because combined resistance of the two, it ends up being a bit of a nightmare. The bearing normally destroys and it's really fun getting it out. So normally I just knock the seal out and then pull the bearing out. Okay, so we got our new bearing up. We got our bearing and race installer. Got one that fits just on the out, just like that. The next one's up a little too big for the hole, so I'm gonna go ahead and line it up and then just gently just start. And of course it wants to be a little bit of a butt. There it goes. Just tap it in. You got a ridge back there, so you should be good to just run it on back. Just like Chubb said, just tap it on in. You'll hear a nice tone change when you bottom out, and you're good to go. All right, so now you get your bearing in. Next thing to do is you need to put your seal in. And make sure you put the seal in the right way. I'm not calling out anybody, but somebody that might happen to be watching this video, they know who they are. Don't put it in backwards. So, make sure your seal's facing out like that. We're gonna go ahead and knock it in. You've got a ridge in there to where it'll bottom out. And then we'll go ahead and put it in and lube it up around a little bit on the side so the shaft will slide in nice and easy. Sometimes it might not want to go right in, so you're going to kind of tickle the sides a little bit, work a way around, and then just kind of hammer it on home. All right, just like the bearing, just go ahead and bottom it on out, and you're good to go. All right, so when it comes to lubing up the sides of the, or the opening of the seal, you can use a few different things. You can use some little white lube like this, like the white lithium, a little bit of red like bearing grease, or you can use a little bit of oil, like gear oil itself. I like to use a little bit of the white lube around the sides, and that way when you go to put the shaft in, it's not dry when it starts spinning. It's gonna take a little bit for you to work the fluid all the way out to the side once you get going. Because what actually pumps the fluid through is the differential itself. So it kind of cycles through. As the differential's spinning, it slings it up, pushes it out through the axle tube, and it falls back through, and it's kind of the natural circulation with it. So, like I said, you don't want to start it dry. You can end up burning up a good seal. So, due to parts issues, as usual, we can't slide the shaft back in just yet. We got to wait a little bit because we still got to get the axle studs, but we're going to go ahead and get those coming and go ahead and get it, and we'll go ahead and put everything back together. All right, so like I said, unfortunately we don't have our wheel studs for tonight, but I want to go ahead and show you guys the rest of what we need to do to put it back together. So at least that way we can finish out the video and you guys get the information. So if you did have your wheel studs, you can go ahead and you can just slide them in. You'll notice on these Moser axles, you've got parts where you got thread-in studs and then you got the press-in studs. What I'm going to be dealing with is the press-in studs. So once we get those in, we'll slide the axle back out, sneak them from the back side. We've got a tool that's basically like a bearing with a taper on it, and you use a sacrificial lug nut, and you run it down with the impact, and it'll pull it back up flush to the back. You just go around and do that to all 5 on each side. Then you can go ahead and slide your axle back in. You go ahead and put your C-clip in that you pulled out earlier on one axle at a time, and then go ahead and pull the axle back out. You're going to need to like hold the clip up in there and then push out at the same time. That'll keep the clip in from falling out. You do that on both sides. And then you're gonna go ahead and put your block back in and slide that back on up in. and put your bolt back through. Maybe put you a little bit of blue Loctite on there and snug it down. I'm sure there's a torque out there. I could not find one out there for you guys, unfortunately. So the cover comes with a gasket. Some people prefer silicone, yada yada, all that. We're gonna clean it up and put the gasket on to see how that works. It tells you in there with the new hardware to go ahead and torque them down to 25 foot-pounds. Now it does say in there about if your threads are come out all the way, or if they're recessed, you know, to use different bolts or whatever. So you got to make sure which setup you have. What they're talking about is whether the threads come all the way out here or not, or if they're recessed in the housing. So if they're recessed, the bolts they supply are not going to be long enough, so you're going to need to go with a different bolt. Once you get everything cleaned up, your surface here, get all your gasket material off, get your oil off, go ahead and put your gasket on, go ahead and put your cover on, and you're going to put it on like this. Of course, that your font's the right way. So there's your fill plug, there's your drain plug. You put all your bolts in and torque those down to 25 foot-pounds. You got your girdle, your stud girdles here. What you're going to do is take these loose, the nuts, and then run these down, run the studs down, and those little feet will push against these main caps here. You know, the bearing caps like we were talking about earlier. We put the stud kit in, and you're going to torque those down to like 5 foot-pounds, and then go ahead and tighten your jam nuts. All right, so what you're going to do at that point, once you got your cover and everything back on, you get your brackets all on and everything like that. All these, the brackets for the e-brake cables and everything. The top shield doesn't really fit anymore from what I understand, so you don't really need that. When you're putting fluid in, you can put your fluid in here, but you got your plug on the side here, your fill plug on the differential on the front here. Yeah, right here on the side. You want to pull that out because that's your actual fill plug. You'll notice this sits a lot higher than that. I mean, you can put fluid in there, but you want to put fluid in until it starts coming out here. Then you put your plug back in, and you know, if you do it, if you fill up to this one, you end up way too full and end up probably puking out the vent. Well, guys, that's a wrap on another how-to with Mike. Hope you guys enjoyed it. This will definitely be a nice upgrade to the Fire Chicken. Now we can put a little bit more power to the back end for now and feel a little bit more comfortable. Plus, the difference in smoothness with those new bearings compared to the old bearings, yeah, it'll make a nice difference. We're starting to get a bit of roaring back there, and I think that's definitely our issue. Everything's pretty clean. So we're going to go ahead and get the studs ordered so we can go ahead and finish this thing up, get it back together, get my wife back in the car, and get her enjoying it again. So remember, until next time, you know, crack open yourself a good cold Dr. Pepper. You deserve it. And then stock is not an option. What's up, guys? Thanks for watching again. If you guys like the video and you think you want to be a part of this team, we're growing like crazy. We're hiring now. We are looking for a full-blown ASE certified technician, maybe somebody at least on the master level, and everything, you know, that can do diagnostics, AC, all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested and think you'd be a good fit in this team, we've got all the information below to contact us. And remember, until next time, stock is not an option.